We will continue our journey by investigating fileless malware attacks and how Elastic SIEM will enable us to detect them. In this module, you will be learning how fileless malware is used in modern attacks. Then we'll go over the important log sources that enable the analysis of the collected payloads. We'll be investigating fileless attacks that leverage PowerShell primarily, but we'll also look at legitimate utilities that are abused as well. And once you have a solid grasp over these topics, we'll look at some techniques that adversaries leverage to bypass detection. The simplest and easiest way to describe fileless malware is by the fact that these don't leverage executable files. In the background, malware payloads are loaded directly into memory and executed. From a detection point of view, what this means is that it reduces the amount of artifacts and indicators for analysts to investigate. This also means that there will be a lack of signatures for antivirus software to detect, especially for AV that focuses on disk-based artifacts. A lot of these attacks will also leverage trusted built-in tools that are part of the operating system and are considered legitimate. So now, let's get a bit more detail on how these attacks occur. Let's consider the following traditional attack scenario that originates from a malicious attachment. Once unpacked, the attachment will be extracted onto disk, and at this point, this should be detected. If the malware is not detected, it will load into memory and become a malicious process. This can retrieve additional payloads and commands by establishing a command and control channel. In the case of a fileless malware attack, once executed, this will get loaded directly into memory, and it will no longer be written to disk. In many cases, a legitimate process will be spawned and establish a C2 channel. Once additional payloads or commands are retrieved, a malicious process can be spawned to carry out additional actions on objectives. The important idea behind this is that the entire infection chain happens only in memory, so searching for disk-based indicators will not provide us with any positive results. Some of the important aspects that defenders should be aware of is that these type of fileless attacks will abuse legitimate utilities, so we can no longer whitelist them. Another aspect is that these techniques are used primarily for post-exploitation attacks, with the main purpose to evade security capability, as well as lateral movement to compromise other hosts on the network and go under the radar of the network security capabilities. We have a few opportunities to overcoming reduced detection capabilities. Improvements to the Windows operating system now enables us to capture logs when these tools are used, including the payloads that are executed. Tools like Sysmon will also enable us to capture the command line arguments, as this mechanism is used by attackers to pass parameters to the various malicious components. Endpoint detection and response platforms can also enable us to capture process execution history, this being the basis for behavior-based analysis. Now let's quickly go through the list of legitimate utilities. Macros, based on VBA scripts, are used in weaponized documents to facilitate deployment of more advanced malware stages and bypass simple defenses. PowerShell. This is the bread and butter of every system administrator. Detection mechanisms have evolved, and PowerShell-based attacks have become easier to detect and investigate if we log and analyze the corresponding security events. Continuing with WMI, or the Windows Management Instrumentation Framework, which is similar to PowerShell, this provides functionality for accessing management information in large enterprise environments, making it a great target for attackers to abuse to gather more information on the infrastructure. Before jumping into PowerShell attacks, we'll take a quick look at some alternative detection methods for VBA and macro-style attacks. Detecting VBA attacks requires a different capability, one such as Sysmon, which will be explored in much greater detail in the next module. But in the context of fileless attacks, let's consider the following scenario, where a user will open an infected document. The process will be word.exe, and its parent process will be explorer.exe. If the user is tricked into enabling macros, then another process named the Windows scripting host will be spawned and it will execute the malicious script. A good behavioral detection here would be to monitor cscript, PowerShell, or CMD processes that have word.exe or any other productivity tool as the parent process. The malicious component might communicate with the attacker's C2 infrastructure to download additional malware components, in which case we can also set up filters to detect outbound network connections from the previously mentioned processes.